And welcome to Thursday Thoughts. My name is Lisa McDaniel, and I am the owner of NewSeason.com. And I want to, first of all, thank you for chiming in today. Our topic today is going to be on relationships. We post a question, and we've been posting things all day long to get you to thinking about the importance of relationships, some things that matter to you in a relationship. And one of the questions was, what are the most important ingredients for being in a healthy romantic relationship? Why is it important? And what do you do to maintain your relationship? So, come on in, join us, chime in, and I'm hoping that we have some really, really great, honest discussion tonight because it's February. A lot of people look at February as like the month for love and relationship and living in whatever blitz that you want to with being happy and in love and in a relationship. But anyways, so we chose February for us to be able to discuss relationship and love. So thank you for being with us tonight. We also want you to come back every Thursday, but specifically the month of February, so that you can chime in and join our discussion on relationship and love. So without further ado, I will try to start the conversation off with what my thoughts are on the most important ingredients for being in a healthy romantic relationship. So for me, I believe that communication is number one. I'm a firm believer that if I can't talk to you, if I can't be transparent with you, and if I can't be honest with you, then we really have no foundation for a relationship. I think it's important that I'm able to relate with you and be able to discuss everything with you. So for me, that's my number one. My number two is honesty. I think that part of communication is being able to be honest about how you feel, what you're saying, whatever you're going through, and honest about where you're at in your relationship. I think that with honesty, you build respect, you build trust, you build a lot of the other elements that are really important in a relationship. But honesty would have to be my number two. My number three is forgiveness. I always try to be very forgiving. Forgiveness for me has been a little bit difficult, not because I don't want to forgive, but sometimes depending upon what you've been through, what another person has done to you, and how deep it hurt you, I have found, I won't say everybody, but I have found that it's sometimes hard to forgive, or not even so much harder to forgive, but I think the process is a little bit different for every situation. But I think that when you're in a romantic relationship, when you're in any relationship, but specifically a romantic relationship, that you have to be willing to forgive and being able to forgive over and over and over again. We are all individuals. We have to be respectful of our individuality and everyone else's as well. And sometimes just flat out, you don't get it right. I don't get it right. You don't get it right. Your significant other's not going to get it right. And so you always have to be willing to go back and say, hey, I'm sorry that you feel this way, but this is not what I meant, or this is not the way I wanted this to come across, or I just didn't know you weren't, you didn't give me the exact description of what you wanted me to do, or I forgot to take the trash out, or I forgot to put dinner on tonight, or I was too busy to put dinner on tonight, or flat out maybe I just didn't want to cook. I don't know why dinner's the biggest thing in my mind, but whatever it may be, I think you have to be willing to forgive. Now, some things are harder than others, but I think as we mature, we learn that nobody is perfect. We learn that everybody makes mistakes, and sometimes people that love you the most make, I don't want to say the greatest mistakes, but their mistakes or their errors cut a little bit different. So I think we have to be both transparent in that we've made mistakes, and we have to also be open and willing to forgive others for their mistakes. So chime in, tell me what's most important to you, what you feel like the most important ingredients are in a romantic relationship. My brother, who is unable to attend Thursday Thoughts, usually because he sleep, because of his work schedule, I sent him these questions and I asked him to chime in. So his most important ingredients for a healthy romantic relationship are communication, understanding, honesty, patience, sex, and your partner being on the same page as you. So if we have any men out there, I want you to go ahead and chime in. Tell me what your thoughts are on this male perspective of what the most important ingredients are in a relationship. Ladies, chime in too, because I want your thoughts as well. But I also think that we have to be open to hear what the men have to say about the most important ingredients in a romantic relationship. Me personally, coming from a woman, I thought from a man that the most important was going to be sex, but it wasn't. It was actually down to number 5 on his list. Now, I don't know if he took his time and put it in the order of importance, but hey, that's what his list says. So here we go. Raven says, communicating with honesty and transparency. Raven, that's where I'm at. You know, I think for me, the older I've gotten, the more important communication and being able to talk and being able I've had to learn to listen because I am, I hate to say I'm a control freak because I don't think I'm that bad, but I like to be in control. Therefore, I sometimes take over conversations without listening. And so I have had to learn to listen. And I think that a healthy part of communicating is not always talking, it's sometimes listening. A lot of times it's listening. Being able to actively listen, not just listen for what you want to hear, but being able to actively listen to what the person is trying to tell you. So I'm all for communicating with honesty and transparency. So I'm going to give y'all some shout outs since we are waiting on y'all to chime in and tell me what your thoughts are. Hey, Tisha, thank you for coming. Christy and Norris and hey, Joe, even my baby is watching. Imagine that. Joe, what do you think? From an almost 18-year-old's perspective, what do you feel like is important in a relationship? Hey, Miss Celeste, Raven, we already gave you a shout out and thank you for being our first person to comment. And hey, Carmen, I am so happy to see you chime in tonight. But I want y'all to comment because I think this is very important. I think a lot of times as young people, we don't, well, I'll say as mature adults, we don't express the importance of relationship and what's important in relationships. And I think that sometimes as a whole, relationships sometimes fail. I'm not going to say it's always this reason, but I think sometimes relationships fail because we don't have enough people being transparent about the hardships in relationships and about, you know, we always want to talk about what looks good and what feels good, and all relationships aren't always going to feel good, guys. And I think that we have to truly own in on what's important. You know, we have to be honest about, hey, you're going to have to work at your relationship. If you're in a romantic relationship with somebody, you're going to have to work very hard to maintain that relationship. I think a lot of times, specifically when you're dating, I think that a lot of times we find ourselves in these falsehoods thinking that every day is going to be peachy and, you know, what he did in the beginning, he's going to always do. But as we find, a lot of times it's a lot easier to do those things, those fun things, those warm and fuzzies in the beginning. You know, maybe you're not spending as much time. Maybe you're just seeing each other once or twice or whatever it may be. And sometimes that tapers off. And when it tapers off, sometimes that puts a little hindrance on the relationship. But we have to learn to keep the fire alive, keep the fun alive. Maybe it looks a little bit different, but we got to be willing to work. And that's what I'm getting at with regard to relationship. With regard to serious relationships, you really got to put in the work. You really have to work at communicating. You really have to work at what your partner needs. I think a lot of times in some relationships, you know, the giving is one-sided and people want what they're not willing to give. And I tell people this all the time. You cannot expect a person to give you something that you're not willing to give in return. Reciprocity is very important. I didn't write that on my list, but it's very important to me. If I'm giving you a part of me, I expect for you to be giving a part of yourself to me as well. I don't want to be the giver in the relationship all the time. Sometimes I need you to meet me halfway. Sometimes I need you to be at 80% when I'm at 20 and vice versa. So I think it has to be a give and a take. Raven says, put the good and the bad on the table so we can work on it together. I think that's very important as well. I think, you know, that kind of goes hand in hand, Raven, with communication. if there's an issue, you have to be willing to talk about it. You have to be willing to discuss it. You also have to be willing, sometimes you just got to walk away. You don't have to win every single situation. I hate to use argument or disagreement because it could just be you don't see the things the way I do. I don't see things the way you do. And at the end of the day, you're not right, I'm not right, and nobody's wrong. We just have a different perspective on things. Carmen says, not only communication, but truly meaning what you say. The same energy that you put in to get with someone is the same, if not more, to keep them. And I agree there. I think that from a woman's perspective, I think that sometimes we feel like men put a whole bunch into getting you, and then they get you, and it's like, I ain't got to do that no more. I already got you. They get complacent. They get comfortable. They like, I already got her, so I don't have to do all that. I don't have to open doors no more. I don't have to go to dinners and plan dates and do any of that things. That is so false. We expect for you, now I'm speaking for the women. If I'm wrong, y'all chime in and correct me. But as women, specifically mature women, we expect for you to keep that going. We expect for you to find a new, fresh way to do some of the same things and to make our heart flutter, so to speak, to make our stomachs quiver and be all giddy and excited. We want to be excited all the time. And I think on the flip side, women, we have to remember men are different beings, they're different creatures, and we're not always going to get that same giddy and flutter and excited feeling, but that doesn't mean he's not trying. So I think we also have to acknowledge the ways in which they do try and the ways in which they do things and give credit where credit is due on both sides. You agree? That's what I think. Okay, so Nora says, your brother's list is a good list. Sex may not be number one, but just like communication, honesty, loyalty, trust is important. Trust is important. Sex is just as much. Most Christian marriages end because of infidelity, lack of sex, financial issues, and when the pastor is brought home and the man has been held up against the standard of what the pastor portrays and what he says. I know that's taboo, but for men, you don't want to hear all the time that his wife's pastor does for his wife, how he handles his wife, etc. I've seen all these things ruin marriage and committed relationships. Okay, so Norris is speaking that sex is just as important in marriage and in committed relationships. So ladies, what do y'all think about that? Do y'all feel like sex is important in romantic relationships? Because that's how we deemed it in our question. How important is sex in committed relationships? Let's just put it out there. A lot of people don't like to talk about sex because it makes them uncomfortable, but we got to be 100 on this. If we're going to talk about romantic relationships, sex 9 times out of 10 plays a part in it. So y'all chime in. Tell me what you think about that and if you agree with what Norris is saying. Carmelita says, I've learned that most people do know what they want. Most don't know when they want it. That's interesting. And I would even go a step further. I think sometimes people know what they want, but for whatever reason, they're not able to communicate it or they don't want to out of the fear of expectation and rejection. So I think you got to be grounded in who and what you are to be able to decipher, differentiate, and to communicate what it is your expectations are. Because if you're in a romantic relationship and you don't know what your expectations of the other person is, you're doomed to fail already because you don't even know what you want. So I agree there. Christy says, knowing and accepting your love language as well as your mates. Clear, honest communication, mutual understanding of sexual needs and desires, compromise and thoughtfulness, consideration, and spontaneity. Last, truly liking the person. I agree there. I think that spontaneity, that is a wonderful word because I like surprises. Now, as much as I like to control things, every now and then I want to be surprised, but I don't want to be too surprised. See, I'm real crazy and picky. I will be the first to say it. Crazy, picky. I have very finicky ways. I love surprises, but if it's too much, I almost can't handle it. So see, I have to give a balance because I have to relinquish some of my control and allow the significant other to be able to work in their own way. And let that be okay and comfortable with me. I don't know. Anyways, so Nor says that goes both ways on getting and keeping a person. Don't start wearing bonnets in public when you wasn't doing that in the beginning. when you wasn't doing that in the beginning and looking and smelling it all the time. Okay, so I'm gonna address that because there has been a whole lot on like reality TV, all kind of shows and memes talking about women and their bonnets or whatever. Now, I'm not just going to knock my homegirls that's wearing their bonnets out in public. I don't wear a bonnet out in public. I will, however, go find me a nice piece of material and have me a little wrap on my head and still be flossy and cute. But I do agree, y'all. You know, there is a standard for which we must maintain. And if we are out here, putting ourselves out here as these flawless beauty queens, and when we step out while we dating, you know, we all put together, and then bam, soon as y'all boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever y'all call it when y'all in a serious relationship, you stop doing all that and you wearing house shoes and you're not tending to yourself. Let's put it that way. You're not tending to yourself the same way. We've got a problem. Houston, there is a problem. And the same goes for men. I know a lot of women that complain, hey, when we first got together and started dating, you know, he was on top of his game, well shaved, manicured, put together. We made it official and I don't even know who this person is. So whatever y'all do to get them, you got to maintain and keep that going. Be it, you know, your appearance, be it taking care of yourself, be it, you know, your aspirations, goals, whatever it is, you should be growing from that place. You should be maintaining and growing, not digressing. So, all right, we addressed that. Now, I'm not going to, y'all, we got to do better. If we truly are wearing bonnets out in public, and there's not a medical reason or something really, really good reason why, let's do better, ladies. Let's do better. Now, I ain't even going there. Okay, let's do better, y'all. So Raven says, knowing your mate's love language is so important. And I believe that. I believe that everybody's need for love, everybody's desire for love is different. What love looks like to me is going to be different for you. And I think that takes time, and that's where patience come into play. I think that patience and communication and honesty comes into play when you're learning your significant other's love language, because you just don't know. When you are first meeting someone and taking the time to get to know them, it takes a little while, probably before you even get to that love phase. But when you get there, it's almost like, well, I don't know what their expectation of love is. I don't know what love looks like to them, but that's why you got to talk. That's why you have to be honest. That's why you have to communicate. And that's why when it's not going or meeting your expectations, sometimes you got to say, time out. Let's talk about this. This makes me uncomfortable, or this is what I need from you. I think that was one of the hardest things that I had to grow and learn about myself, is that it was very hard for me to be able to say, okay, this is what I need from you. It's very hard for me to tell anybody that I need them, specifically because both my parents are now gone. Those were the two people that I could call and say, I need. And outside of them, that means I got to trust you with what I'm telling you I need. And then if you can't provide it, then what is my expectation? So I think we have to work on being able to be honest about saying what it is we need with our significant others, what it is we want from them, what we need from them, and what we want that to look like or feel like. So I agree, Raven. Christy says sex is important. All right. Carmen says sex is important. So we got two ladies that are agreeing with these two men saying that sex is just as important in a relationship. So, ladies and gentlemen, why is sex so important? Let's just go on and throw the monkey out there. Why is sex so important in a relationship? Well, I'm going to read some of these comments, but I want somebody to chime in, and I want your thoughts on why is sex so important in the relationship? What does it do for you? What is it fulfilling? What makes sex important or a part of your romantic relationship? And is it a game changer? If you don't have a healthy sexual relationship, what does that say about your relationship? Is it going to make it? Is it not going to make it? Is it a game changer for you? Is it a deal breaker? Chime in, let me know. Carmen says, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but I try to keep from expectations to keep from getting hurt. I agree there. And Carmen, I think that those are that's probably something that a lot of us have to deal with, is when we have an expectation of somebody, we're afraid of getting hurt. We're afraid of them failing us. We're afraid of them not meeting us where we need them to meet us. But at the same time, I think that it's only fair that when you get in a relationship, you're going to have some sort of expectation. And whatever that expectation may be, I think that it's healthy for you to communicate that. Everybody's not going to be able to meet your expectations. And I think that it's very important that you learn that in the beginning. If you don't communicate that, you don't know that. So therefore, you put yourself in a position where 6 months, a year, 5 years in, you could have had a conversation right in the beginning and said, these are my expectations. These are the things I need. This is what I want in a significant other. But because you didn't have that conversation, then you 6 months, 2 years, 3 years in, and he's looking like, well, you never said that was important to you. You never told me this is what you want. So I think that it can be good, Carmen, being protective of your feelings and someone hurting you. But I think that for a healthy relationship, you got to be honest. You got to be able to communicate what it is you need. You got to be able to communicate what your expectations are. And either they can meet them, they can try, or they can just say it's not for me. Either way it goes, it's better that you know in the beginning than all the way in the end. Christy said, we just want to be made love to mentally first. So Christy must be speaking from a woman's perspective, and she's saying that women, she believes, just want to be made love to mentally first. So if you just want to be made love to mentally first, then what does that look like, Christy? Describe to us what that looks like. Nora says, one of the biggest things is, okay, I know you love me, but do you like me? That is very important, because sometimes, although you love a person, when they get on your nerves, do you like them enough to stick around in the tough times? And when it seems my actions may not be lovable at that time. And that's why it's very important. I think that sometimes we begin to have feelings and we like people a lot, and then we feel like we love them and it's all warm and fuzzy. But you have to remember, every day is not going to be warm and fuzzy. And Norris, I think that it's important for people to remember that every day is not going to go as you have it sought out and planned. Every day is not going to be like a scheduled day. Today we may be able to do something, and tomorrow emergency arrives. You got to be able to chime in and be like, oh, okay, it didn't happen like I thought it was going to happen, but you know what? This is just another day. There's another day that we're going to be able to do something else. We can reschedule. We can do things differently. We got to be able to not be so rigid. And that's a lesson that I've had to work on with me. I'm always transparent in that I have a little controlling tendency, but I'm much better, y'all. I know I talk about it all the time, but it feels so good to know that you no longer live in that space, that you kind of allow yourself to flow with life. You allow yourself to feel. You allow yourself to be okay when things aren't aligned the way you feel like they should be mentally and emotionally. And so I think that you have a very valid point. You have to be willing to acknowledge whether you're going to love a person when you don't necessarily like them. Maybe they hurt your feelings, but do you still love them? Do you still love them enough to continue in the relationship? Or do you just love them enough to, I'm going to love you when I like you, and when I don't like you, I don't love you, so I'm going to go do my own thing? That brings about a whole lot more issues, a whole lot more concerns. So we can tackle that as well. Christy says, we need to discuss sexual desires more openly. Stop tiptoeing. I think you are so right. And so right now is my disclaimer, just in case anybody says anything that might be offensive. If you are under 16, you may not want to be in this conversation. If you're under 18, you probably won't want to be under this conversation. But if you got your parents' permission, sex is what it is. And while I'm giving disclaimer, 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds, trust me, I deal with a whole lot of them. They probably could come in here and teach us all something. But I do think that I was raised by parents that talked openly about sex. I think that they talked openly about the act of sex, but not openly about what sex might look like in a committed relationship and what's allowable and what's not allowable. I think that my parents were open to talk about it, but they didn't want to discuss the nitty-gritties of it, if I must say, the various acts, the various ways people have sex and all of that. But I do believe that people have to be open to it, because that presents a problem. If all you want to do is have sex in the quote unquote missionary style, maybe that's not what your significant other wants. Maybe they want to explore other things in the bedroom. But are you open to that? So some of these things, again, people, are conversations that you got to have in the beginning. You got to be willing to openly talk about what your sexual desires are, what your sexual expectations are. Maybe your expectation is we have sex once a week. Maybe somebody else thinks they need to have sex 5-10 times a week. I don't know. But you got to be willing to talk about it. And if you're not willing to talk about it, you really aren't honestly able to have an expectation. So talk about it. Q says sex is another level of connectivity. I truly believe that. You know, a lot of times I have ran into individuals that believe, or they want to believe, that they can just have sex with whoever and it won't matter when it's all said and done. And that is just a flat out lie. I don't care whether you're a man or a woman. If you are giving yourself to somebody sexually, you are going to feel something afterwards. What do they say? Soul ties, spirit ties, whatever it may be. You are somewhere connected to this person. It is impossible for you not to be when it's all said and done and over with. So ladies, men, be careful with who you choose to have sex with. Be careful with who you engage with. Be careful and mindful with who you give yourself to. That's my word to the wise. Rape says another level of intimacy. Okay. Nor says sex is another level of commitment as well. I believe that. Hey, Shanice, I'm glad you joined us. Nor says relationships will always be a gamble. The risk of being hurt is always there on both sides. I totally agree. Vernita says trust, communication, goal-oriented, security, knowledge of self. Yes. Katie says it is a way to combine two individuals as one. It creates a closeness that can't be duplicated in any other way. I totally agree. Christy says sex connects us on all levels. If done right and the energy and chemistry is powerful, it will elevate the two. Carmen says sex is another form of communication to me. Honestly, there's a difference between the convenient quickie and when you can feel the emotion connected to the act. Okay. But, okay, Carmen, you says that correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that there's a difference. So are you saying that there's no connectivity when you are having a quickie versus when you are taking your time and making love? Because both of them are sex, but are you saying that the connectivity is different there? So explain that a little bit so that I can make sure I understand what you're saying. Because my belief is whether it's a quickie or whether it's the slow, long, drawn out love making, you're still going to have a connection. And that's my personal opinion. It doesn't have to be anybody else's, but that's what I think. Nor says sex brings the intertwining of the two spirits, which brings about what the word calls a soul tie. That's why God ordained it specific for marriage. The two becoming one flesh is not just the people getting married. It is the linking of the spirit. And although we don't always follow that command, it brings about a very real and clear change in relationships. I would have to agree. Sharna says sex is the highest form of intimacy on every level. Spiritual, mental, physical, and biological. Whoa. Girl, you took it there. But I agree. Christy says someone making love to the mind is being able to touch me with conversation, action, thoughtfulness, being strategic, beating me to higher level of thought, touching me without touching me. Okay. So you're saying that you want someone to touch your soul, to touch your mind, to touch your heart, to touch your being without physically touching you, but being able to get into your mind, get into your mental state is what you're saying, Chrissy, is what I hear you saying. I think you want to be able to, you're saying that, yeah, I'm messing that all up, but I get what you're saying. I think that you're saying that there's much more to intimacy and a sexual conversation than just the physical, correct? Okay, I see you said yes, so that must be correct. So y'all, this was a hot topic, and we're going to run out of time here in a minute, but I just want somebody to chime into me, and from a woman's perspective, and then I need a man's perspective, tell me what the number one thing in a relationship is, in your opinion. While I'm waiting on that answer, Carmen says, yes, the connectivity is different in a quickie. Each person tends to be more focused on self-satisfaction rather than the satisfaction of their partner. Okay, so we're going to probably run out of time tonight, but if y'all need to go, I totally understand. We just going to get this topic rolling. I have to know. So you're saying that a quickie is self-satisfaction, but when you're making love and taking your time, that it's not about satisfaction? Because in my opinion, it's about satisfaction on both levels. One just needs to occur a little bit more faster than the other. Now, that's my opinion. So does anybody else have a different opinion of a quickie and taking your time making love? Because I think that both of them have a tie. Communication seems to be winning with the women. I got communication from Q, communication from Carmen, communication from me, communication from Keisha, and Keisha also said honesty. So yes. All right, Norris, I think you're the only male that's in the group still, so I need you to chime in. What would be your number one thing that is of utmost importance in a relationship, in a romantic relationship? What would be your number one from a male's perspective? Y'all, I absolutely love y'all. I just want y'all to know that. Okay, Tia says loyalty too. But I just want you guys to know that I appreciate y'all for coming back every Thursday. Next Thursday, y'all send me some inboxes on what y'all want to talk about for next Thursday. But continue to invite your friends to Thursday Thoughts. Continue to invite males if you know them so that we can get more diverse conversation in here. Hey, I see you, communication and trust. All right. So that we can get a little more input. I think that it's very important that we continue to talk about these subjects because so many people think that specifically sex is taboo and that we shouldn't talk about it. And women, if you talk about different things and different acts and the way you like it and what you don't like and how you like it to be done, it's so taboo. But I think it's honest. It's honest conversation. And I think we need to have more of them. Go to www.newseason.com and like our blog, share our blog, comment, go to Instagram. You can also follow us on your Facebook page at New Season. I love y'all, and I can't wait to see what next week brings about. Oh, before we go, Nora says communication and forgiveness. Okay, I can rock with that. Q says quickies aren't bad. I think it depends on the person. If you have that understanding, you know the needs of your mate. Long or short, it all is meaningful. Now, I agree there, Q. I know I said we was getting off, but hold on. I agree with you there, Q. And I think that we have to, that's a better way of saying it. I think that's kind of where Carmen was going, but I think that she didn't put it that way. But when you put it that way, I totally have to agree. I don't think quickies are bad, but I think it depends on the person. It depends on the time. It depends on what your relationship is with that person. Maybe y'all got 5 minutes and there's just a need there that needs to be met. And then maybe y'all got all night. So, hey, it can all be the same and mean the same and be meaningful, but there's just a time restraint there. So I like that answer. Bernita says flexibility. Christy said quickies are necessary. And if you are tuned into your partner, we're trying to get one another there. Yes. Q, is Christy my brain twin? Y'all might be. So I'm going to need both of y'all to come back next week. I love y'all. I'm out of here. Thank you for coming another Thursday Thoughts. Bye.